Reno Turcotte.
Tēnā koe, Mr Speaker. I'm pleased to add my contribution to this bill in support of this bill, and can I congratulate the Right Honourable Member for his good fortune in bringing this bill to the House. And sir, we are supporting this bill. I mean, it's a very straightforward bill, sir, and why shouldn't Kiwis be entitled to know when foreign nationals are buying up our land, where those purchases are, and how much land is being sold? Why? It's a very clear bill. And sir, I mean, if anyone, we've heard in this debate, people touch on the loss of whenua to Māori, and this cuts deep to every Māori when we're talking about a debate on land. And I'm actually reminded, sir, of Mr Peters is from the north, and I'm reminded of the great prophet, the Ngāpuhi prophet, Apirahama Taunui. And this prophecy has come to pass, sir, but the prophecy was that there's a taniwha coming from across the sea, and its kai is land, and it has an insatiable appetite, and its puku will never be filled. And sir, to Māori, that prophecy has come to pass, but sir, I fear that the taniwha is coming back and it's growing another head. The taniwha is coming back, and this government is not keeping a tight rein or keeping any measure whatsoever on this taniwha. And sir, that is all we are asking for in this bill. All we are asking for is that there is an accurate, up-to-date register of foreign nationals who are purchasing land in Aotearoa, New Zealand. And we've heard all sorts of excuses. The government is great coming up with excuses and throwing up tax definitions and the like, how they shouldn't do things. But sir, this is a very simple piece of legislation. All it's asking for, it's applying the definition that's contained in the Overseas Investment Act 2005, that overseas persons, any purchases of land by overseas persons should be entered into a register. And so what are we talking about, sir, when we're talking about overseas persons? Well, it's better if we say what we're not talking about. Obviously, we're not talking about New Zealand citizens, and we're not talking about overseas persons who may be ordinarily resident in New Zealand. So those who hold residence class visas under the Immigration Act, or who are domiciled here and have an intention of staying here. We're not talking about those people. They're all fine. But what we're talking about are foreign nationals who have no intention of being ordinarily resident in New Zealand, who aren't New Zealand citizens, and yet have unrestrained access to buying up residential land, rural land, all lands within New Zealand. All we're asking for is that we keep an accurate measure and a register of that. And sir, how can we manage an issue? How can we manage a problem when the government refuses to measure it? It refuses to capture the data, and the data that they do use is so crude and it's absolutely pointless. So sir, that's all we're asking for. All we're asking for is an accurate measure, that we keep this register. Sure, sir, there may be some tweaks that may be required in this to the bill, and I'm sure that the Select Committee will tease out those issues. But fundamentally, sir, the purpose of this bill is very sound, and that's why we are supporting it. We want to see, and I think all Kiwis right throughout the country would like to know, how much of our land and where of all of our lands is owned by foreign nationals, by those who aren't citizens of our country, who aren't ordinarily resident in our country, and have no intention of being so. And that's all that this bill asks for. And I think it's, if it's good enough for Australia, if it's good enough for the UK, and if it's good enough for all those other jurisdictions from around the world to implement exactly what we're doing here, then surely it's good enough for this Parliament to be supporting this bill and putting it to Select Committee so we can tease it out and hopefully usher it into law. So, sir, I commend this bill to the House. Kia ora.
David Seymour.
Mr. Speaker.